Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the session. We're just waiting for two other speakers that will be joining us for this session. So let's just give them like a minute or two, and then we should start very shortly. Thank you. Greeting, greetings and Bula Vinaka to everyone tuning in this morning from very diverse, very different places that we're tuning in from. Um, I'm sure the tech team, this is the cue that we can start with the session. Luis, yeah, I think this is the cue that we can. Good morning and welcome to the session. Welcome to the session, which is going to be talking about why is it important to even have this conversation of gender and feminist inclusivity analysis into this work of climate justice. Just before we get started, there's supposed to be a video. I'm sure the tech team will have the video ready. Straight after this, we'll play a video and that will a 3 minutes video that will introduce, kind of really ground the session, and we'll go straight into the session where we'll be introducing the panelists. We have 4 young grassroots young people that will be sharing their experience and the work that they're already doing on the ground on climate change. And also we have a long time accomplices of the young people's work, Pauline Mabuko, who will also be joining us at the end, sharing her experience and some of the progress and challenges in trying to do this work with youth and young people. And straight after that, we're going to open the session for some question and answer. Feel free to pop in your question on the chat or unmute yourself to share your question. And then we'll wrap up the session by asking the panelists to have their last says before we close the session with a high tune. And we hope that you will enjoy the session and be with us throughout. Can we have the video, Luis, can we have the video play now? Thanks.
Others. However, movements
Sindra, could you unmute for the video, please?
For land, water, food, and energy. From Pacific Island feminists to the Black Mesa Water Coalition, frontline communities are building sustainable, long-term solutions.
Sorry, can you hear the audio?
We can now.
Now we can.
Can we just start from the beginning, DIVA? Is that possible?
Again?
Restart. Yeah, sure. Can we restart from the beginning, please?
Yep.
The climate and environmental crisis is rooted in an economic model that exploits people and planet while increasing inequalities and violence. States and corporations repress people fighting for access to natural resources, indigenous people and ethnic minorities, rural women, and many others. However, movements around the world are resisting and creating solutions to local needs for land, water, food, and energy. From Pacific Island feminists to the Black Mesa Water Coalition, frontline communities are building sustainable, long-term solutions. What if we replace profit with safety, well-being, justice, health, and sustainability? What if people and planet were the center of our solutions? What if we listen to stories of resistance and connect with feminist and ancestral knowledge? It's time for change and the redistribution of wealth and resources. It's time to hear feminist voices and build solutions that benefit all people and the planet.
Thank you. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed that short video. And just say if you want to, we have a link for that video. We'll make sure we post it on the chat, and you can also share it with your network. That video kind of really speak about the session that we're going to be going into for the next hour and a half. This session will be about digging deep into this conversation, where it's about practicing feminist analysis in the work that we're doing. How do we do that? Is making sure that when we're doing this work, we are taking into consideration the different intersectionality that each individual wears. We're also talking about how do we as an organization or movement or network really are working from a human rights approach into battling climate change. How are we as networks, as movements, are speaking to each other in a way that we are really acknowledging the knowledge that we bring in our networks and the constituency that we represent. And before I go deep into that, I will take this time to really just to share the opportunity that we have been given to be part of, to co-host this session with the networks that is with us this morning, which is with Pacific, Pacific Rainbow Advocacy Network, Alliance for Future Generation, Ganga Grassroots Young Women's Network, and of course, DIVA for Equality Fiji, and all other networks that we here representing, so Women Defend the Commons and 350.org, that are also part of this work that we are all doing for the same cause. So it's a privilege to be here with you all and co-hosting this session. Why is it important to be having a feminist position into the work that we're doing on climate change? And what is that about? I'll give the chance for you to hear from the rest of the panelists. I would say from my perspective is, why is it important? Because feminists will bring out all the uncomfortable conversation that we tend to not want to look at. Feminists will work from approach that it's about human rights for all, not just specific ones, not just the ones that get to be invited into spaces, but also the ones that are doing this work on the ground, but hardly get into spaces. People that, gender non-binary people, we don't really have a space that is so inviting that really want to hear our voice. For us as young Pacific women, and for me as an LBT young woman, I have to fight twice and thrice as any young woman to be part of this kind of conversation and spaces, because of this stigmatization that only certain voices, only certain knowledge is accepted and should be heard. So this platform, this session this morning, will kind of trying to get your thinking beyond that. These grassroots feminists and activists will share with you the experience, regardless that people that we might see that society might class them as a different kind of people, the second citizen class and stuff. But these are the ones that are really taking the front line to defending their communities, their networks, defending, even standing up for their other sisters and brothers who doesn't even have a space to go and share what they go through in these times of climate change. So without further ado, I will now take this time to introduce our first speaker for this morning. I will introduce Bonita Ngio, who is a coordinator of Pacific Rainbow Advocacy Network, also a community leader and an activist for sex worker and LGBTQI rights in the western side of Fiji, mainly around Nadi, Lautoka, and Ba. Apart from being an activist and a grassroots organizer, Bonita is also a farmer and a designer by professional. Bonita, you have the floor. Thank you. Oh, well, this is part of these technical problems, yeah? So Bonita was just with us a while ago. Let me just check. Okay, while we're gonna wait for Bonita to come back in the space, Bonita is actually going to speak about the importance of including a trans woman analysis and the work that trans women are already doing, or LGBTQI broadly, in the work they are committing to be doing in not just during COVID, in trying to fight climate change, but also the work that they're doing within the network. Why is it important to have a specific analysis, a specific position as a trans woman and a human rights defender in this kind of in the conversation? So is it possible? Can we go to the second speaker and then we'll come back to? Oh, yeah. Bonita, can you? Okay. Bonita, you have the floor.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, Bolovinaka to everyone. A very good morning to you all. Musa Golovina from the Western Division, the Sunny West. Bolovinaka Wikimdume Kandavu. Good to see you all. First of all, for this great opportunity and this great platform. I must apologize. I've been handling too much of forks and knife and little of this gadget, so I still have a problem trying to play with technology. But nevertheless, I know I have support from everyone, and I think we can make whatever possible we can do. On the note, I just want to start off by asking the question: why does it really matter for us to be there, or to be talked about, or to be represented at the COP 26? Well, for me, as an individual, as a trans woman, as an advocate, it has never been easy, especially in times of disaster for us here in the community. And there's been difficulties accessing resources, accessing assistance after disasters. And more to that, we see that we are not recognized in the community as vulnerable groups, as individuals that need support. Furthermore, and that I think there's less awareness in regards to whatever is available, whatever resources are available, whatever assistance available. And so less of us tend to access these resources or these services. Also because of stigma associated to our gender. And more than that, I think that because the system haven't been inclusive. One of the reasons too is because most of these DRR policies in community DRR are not inclusive or don't have a gender component in DRR policies. That's also, we can see that with the national DRR policy, it's not gender inclusive. And when we are not in policies, we miss out on data. So we don't really have much data on who's being assisted, or trans women or in communities that are being assisted, or LGBT members in community that are being assisted. It's because that for one reason, we are not in decision-making spaces. And I think that's maybe the reason why we need to recommend something. So
I think we've dropped Bonita, but I'm sure we all get a chance to hear what Bonita is actually talking about. And for me, I think just to wrap up from what she was able to share with us, is three important things that kind of stood out was the less awareness that they have in assisting, in accessing assistance that's available for LGBTQI broadly, and specifically for sex workers organization, and stigmatization, which is not a new conversation actually that we have to bring on the table every day. It's in every spaces that we are hearing about the stigmatization. Youth networks, youth activists have different way of in framing stigmatization, but for LGBTQI, it's a different set of stigmatization, because you don't just get left out from the general movement, but you don't just get left out from community and society, you actually get left out from even in some broader movement. And also what she mentioned about policies. If there is no policies and actually collecting data about them, then how do we then keep expecting them to be the movers on the ground when disaster hits? When there's a hurricane, there's everything, it's almost young people. And normally I've worked with DIVA for 10 years. When I see LGBTQI people, are normally the people that are on the front line trying to build back their community, even their homes. So thank you, Bonita, for sharing that. I will now introduce our second. Bonita, you have.
When the water level drops, is everyone still able to hear me?
Yes, we're able to hear to get you. And then Nolene has also done some notes on the side, and we hope that has justice for you in what you were trying to say. Are we okay, Bonita, to leave now, and then we'll come back to you afterwards? The first round.
Hello.
I will now introduce our next speaker, Lavinia Ngaraninamu. Lavinia is a young woman hailed from the island of Kandavu. She's originally from Kandavu, just been here because of COVID lockdown. And she is part of the Nganga Grass Young Women's Network, which is a network within the DIVA organization. And she's also a youth worker within her village. I will now give it to Lavinia. Lavinia will share with us how does being part of the network somebody is. Lavinia will share with us how is a young woman trying to move around in a village setting, a full cultural setting. How does being part of a network, being part of feminist organizing, helps her move the work that she wishes to do in an environment such as the village setting. La, you have the floor.
Yandra, good morning to all of you who listen this morning. As a grassroots activist and a young woman from a very traditional and cultural community, it's really hard for me as a young woman to speak out in the village or in the community where I lived in. And also it's a taboo, or it's not usual for us young people or young women to speak up to our community. So this climate justice really helps us living in the village. This is where our voice has been heard. This is where our opinions are heard from the elders, because young women and young people, they really have some opinions and some thoughts that can move our village forward, that can carry us forward. So this climate justice really helps us. We really need this in our community, so that the elders and the village leaders can hear our opinions as a young people. And also the young women in our village, we did the work in the village. we are the front liners of doing the work in the village, because we are active, and also we can do things at this age that old people cannot do. So we can move our village forward by doing things in our village to change to do, I mean, to what you call, to defend our environment, and also to protect our environment, our sea and our forest in the village. And also and also we, the young people, can do the work in the village. So as for me, a young woman, I really need this climate justice, this gender analysis and climate justice to participate in my village, so that my other younger women, and other younger people in the village can move in, can jump in and do the work, and so that their voices can be heard in the village, so that the elders can see what their opinions are, so that they can do something to protect the climate. Because in Kandavu nowadays, we are facing the strong current of the hurricanes, and also the hurricanes are doing many damages in the village, and also they destruct many houses. For us young people, we can prevent that. I do hope that young people can prevent the work of the destruction of the climate change that we are facing right now. So only I want to share some strategies. I want to invite young people and young women out there to join in, jump in, and let's put our hands together and work together, and move our community forward. That's from me.
Nakala. Thank you. Naka. Very important points that's been shared by Lavinia is how are we really going to be extending the work that we're making sure that we're not just talking among ourselves, but we're also really reaching out to places like maritime areas, poor urban areas. How are we capturing their analysis? How are we making sure that we are also talking to them? Now we're reaching COP26. How are we making sure that all young people's and youth, young women's voices are what captured in what we are taking up to the COP for COP26. So thank you, La, for that very informative, very straight up conversation and strategies. I will now introduce our next speaker is Timaima Tamoy, an LBTI organizer and advocate and human rights defenders and social. She engaged herself in youth network spaces and movements on issues on human rights, ecological and climate justice, and socio-economic for all. Tima comes with a grassroots activist and extreme working with women and LGBTI movements. Tima, I will now give you the floor.
Thank you, Viva. Can you hear me? Check sound. I got a neighbor who's doing landscaping, so I'm just flagging in. That's why. Thank you. I want to share screen. How say disable that I can share screen?
Well, let's get tech to assist you in that. Jacinta, can we get Tima to share her screen, please?
Yeah, you should see a button that gives you the option to share. It's like down the bottom. It's how do I describe the icon? It's like a computer screen with a cross on it.
Yeah.
Yep, click on that and then pick the screen you want to share.
No, it's not letting me.
Is there a copy of what you want to share? Maybe I can share it for you.
Yeah. And I know I'm new to this Hope King, that's why I couldn't share. I'll just speak on from what my presentation would be. I'll speak first a little bit of who DIVA is, so that I can share my PowerPoint. First, I would say that who we are. We are.
Are you on Google Slides? Maybe you can just.
Yeah.
Can you add someone just to share for you? You want to add literature? Luis?
Hey, yeah, if you share in the chat, I can get them up for you. Thanks.
Luis, can she just add you on the Google Slides and you share from your end?
I can do that, yep.
Oh, so you put it in the chat, Tima?
Yeah, it's on the chat.
Okay. Luis, can you get it from the chat?
You'll have to give me access to it. I can't open it.
Well, tech. The pros and cons of tech.
Tima, is it the same one as Cardo's? You want me to share that one? No, another one, different one. Okay.
Do we still have the tech team on this? One of them?
Yeah.
Okay. So the PowerPoint is on the chat. Will you be able to play from the chat?
Yes, but it's I need access, so it's not public to share. If whoever owns the file, they can just click like giving us view access, and we'll be able to share it. Or
Tima, change the setting to public. I think you're still private. Just on the corner.
It comes to you on email, Tima. You just have to look in your email.
Do you want me to show you where to find the editing? Okay, I'll have a go at sharing my screen. Well, you could probably see a bit too much there. So on your slide, there's a share button on the top right corner. If you click share, it will tell you that you can change it to make it like you can get anyone who has the link can view, comment, or edit. So that's like the quickest way you can edit your share access. And then we would just refresh. Give that one a go.
I'll share it with YouTube. You just check Google Slide.
Yep, I'll refresh.
Okay.
And Louise, is it working for you? Because it's not working for me.
No, I can't. I still don't have access. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Sorry. Yeah, I really apologize for not having this ready prior to the session, but perhaps you can continue, and I'll try and figure out an alternative behind.
Okay. Thank you, Luis. Tima, you want to just take us verbally through the presentation, and then when you get the PowerPoint, and we can just play the slides.
Yeah. Apology for that. Timo Tamoy calling from it's Suva, and it's sunny day. So this is so nervous for me to be here all in front of you all. I will start off to introduce a little bit of who DIVA for Equality is, who we are. We are a lesbian, bisexual, transmasculine, gender non-conforming collective, who we call ourselves a radical feminist group here in Fiji. And we work mostly in the region and globally. And also we join many groups on coalition networks, and also we have 8 LBT network here in Fiji, who are LBT communities around the Viti level and Vano level. We also have WDC network around Viti level and Vano level that we've been building over the years. From my end, DIVA for Equality, we work from not only on LBT, but also all on women, all people, on human rights, social, economic, ecological, and climate justice everywhere. DIVA, part of DIVA's work, we work from 5 work streams, which mainly work stream 1 is on universal human rights. Work stream 2 is strengthening our gender, solidarity, economic, climate, and ecological justice. Work stream 3 is more on building the movement. Work stream 4 is on urgent response on loss and damage. And work stream 5 is on our organization, sustainability and development. Work that we do, we base our work mainly on bodily autonomy, intersectionality, and especially on inclusiveness and interlinkage approach. Shall I continue, Viva, with my...
Yes, please, go ahead.
Why young women organizing is important in the movement? For me, Young Women in Network has been the ongoing work has been going on the ground, as you have heard from our last speaker, Lavinia. So why the grassroots organizing is important in the movement is to create a feminist-based and organizing approach, especially onto how organizing has to be done in a systematic way, but also holding accountable the system that are not inclusive of young women into spaces, and also creating a network within the intergeneration with those that have been working on the climate change issue for over years. I can see on the slide those are the Fiji women builders that are part of DIVA's work. They went to build a bridge at the maritime island, which the bridge was destroyed by a cyclone Winston in 2016. So if the Fiji women builders are created by young women and gender non-binary people, that this is a kind of work that also matter for us here in the Pacific, that building bridge for villages is bringing in structural change towards the fight of climate change. Next. Also, why is it important grassroots organizing into the movement is it brings in direct voices from communities, as we can see that there's young women who believe that it is important to preserve and consume our environment. Working hand to hand is important for all of us as the younger generation, from older to the youth generation. On the next slide is a young woman in Lami who are fighting for the defending of the ocean, where many in our communities that we face now, we've been working closely with community in the Lami that lives closely to the ocean, that their source of food comes out from the ocean, that now they're finding it difficulty to bring the same food source that has been there and now has been, due to climate changes, has been limited. fighting climate change for me as a young grassroots young activist, I would say, in order for us to fight climate change, we also need to fight gender-based the violence. Within our community, and also the what also important is in climate change is the matter of the intergeneration equality of women and girls. The fight for climate change within. If I might take a break here, then I'll continue.
Okay. So far, very important what Timo was sharing about in the intergenerational approach, making sure that we're working, because I think for DIVA specifically, one of the interlinkage and making sure that we work from this interlinkage approach, where it's just not about climate, environment, it's also about the bodies, it's also about the people and what they go through every day. And also the intersectionality, making sure that, it's about recognizing every individual's identity that one body carries. So I think that is kind of important for us to also think about while we're trying, when we're reaching COP26, how are we working to better that kind of approaches? How are we really disrupting, as young people, disrupting how we want to move forward, making sure that we are not just hollowing in the wind, but we're very strategic. We're working from an approach that is very strategic, that it's not just about now, as where we at right now, we're calling ourselves youths, but it's also about moving forwards and also acknowledging what the work has been done over the decades. Without further ado, we will now hear from Arvella Bella Tokasara. Bella is being active from when she was just 14 years old in being part of young people and youth movement. And she's here representing Alliance for Future Generation. And she also been doing a lot of groundwork on the ground, with also including where the district where she hails from. She's also part of the Tailevu Provincial Youth Council. So Bella, you have the floor. Thank you.
Mbulu maleka to everyone. I hope you all can hear me perfectly.
Yes.
Vinaka. Just because right now I'm in a village. I'm in a village right now. We're doing one distribution, so I have to come straight into this pre-COP 26 just to give out my opinions and my thoughts on things that are happening around us. So to be honest, I was not that serious into climate change and into climate justice. And then for the past few years, 2016 is when I believe Cyclone Winston came in. That's where I saw that young women were really struggling with and then I had to come back to the village, to my village in Nakelo, and see how people are how women and young youths are getting all their things together and trying to get all things together. And even women, they're trying to rebuild their houses, and they're rebuilding their houses and of course looking after their household. So when we went to Koro, and I hear Koro Island, and then I went and see these things are the same things that are happening around Fiji, as I could say. And it leads me to why these issues have not been heard around the world. It gives me questions, because whenever I come around to every woman, whenever I ask them, why is this not happening? Why the government is not helping? Why this organization is not helping? And they are saying is that our voices are not being heard. And it's sad to hear voices from women that are struggling, that are trying to meet the demands, and they are helping out their own individual households. As I've seen that women have proven to be the leading way towards more equitable and sustainable solutions to climate change. Across sectors, women's innovations and expertise have transformed lives and livelihood and increased climate resilience and overall well-being. As a youth worker or as a youth, our voices, especially young women, are unheard at the local and national policy making, but we are securing our positions at the decision making table through our knowledge, leadership, and activism. As we've heard from Tima and Lavinia, is that young people can do the work in the village, which means we can do the work. Whatever you can throw it to us, we can do it. So I want to make an emphasis, and I want to put this in this pre-COP26, is that if we could have an agenda that is specifically for gender, if we can put out there, is that we need an agenda that is specifically built for gender so that our voices can be heard. I'll give it back to you, Riva.
Thank you, Bella. As the feminist would shout on the streets and yell out in empty rooms, there is no climate justice without gender justice. And it's important that we hear this and we hear it and put this down as part of all our agendas in this work, because if not, then more than half a decade of the voices of our people will not be heard. Since women make up majority of the citizenship in our country, we need to make sure that their voices are also heard. That we're making spaces where these issues where the women are speaking about are taken into consideration. Feminist coalition alone cannot do it. Generation Equality Campaign cannot do it alone. It needs to be something that everyone, every networks and every organizing that we're talking about, wanting to talk about climate justice, we're making sure that we're including gender justice into it. Thank you, Bella. I will now introduce our last speaker, Nolene Mbulivo, who has worked for over 35 years as a feminist activist and community organizer. And one of her love work right now is being the director of DIVA for Equality, and it's come to 10 years that she's running the organization. And also, majority of you that might know Nolene would know this, but maybe if you're new, you don't know this, that Nolene actually have a Itoke father, so she hailed from Travualu in Kandavu, one of the maritime islands here in Fiji, and a mom from Australia. Without further ado, and she has a 3-year-old daughter at home. Without further ado, I'll give it to Nolene. Nolene, you have the floor. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And the first thing I'd say is I wanted to kind of frame myself in this, because important always for DIVA is the radical politics, and that includes around organizing by, for, with young people, because I think that's one of the things where we all get confused, including those of us who've aged out. And one of the first things I wanted to say, for example, Viva and Tima and them will tell you, I had absolutely nothing to do with the organizing of this session. Once the request came in, because it's a youth-led conference, I backed away, provided the information to Viva and Tima and Kado or Vika, who's also in the chat, and they organized everything, including who speaks, including the youth networks. And the reason why I say that is, it also is around ourselves who've aged out. I started doing organizing when I was 16 years old, and I'm 53 years old now. And so it's not always easy for you to kind of transition, through your life, having once been a youth activist and then aged out. How do you do that? And how do you do it in a gracious way and a grateful way, but also in a fierce feminist political way? And it's not always easy. And I think that's kind of what I want to talk about today, Viva, if that's okay. And so the first thing I would say is that, when Viva and them asked me to speak, kind of like, she framed it as, what problems do you have working with young people? Are there things that you can speak about? Like she said, feminists get into the deep and the dark and sometimes the ugly. And then I was thinking about it, for the last couple of days, and I was thinking that one of the things that I'm clear about is that we're in a time where it's really patriarchal, and it's also heteronormative, and it's also neoliberal capitalist, you know, and it's very racist. There's all kinds of things. It's still the remainder of coloniality that's in all our bodies, right? So all these things every day are part of why we live the way we do and why we act the way we do. And so there's like an underlying violence within our communities and within our own people, within ourselves, that we don't always recognize. And it's very hard for us to think about that. And so as we're trying to talk and to think through ecological solutions and social solutions and economic solutions, sometimes that violence that's within us, you know, that comes from who we are, all the good that comes from our past, but also the bad that comes from our past, comes with us in our work. So then we are working every day, like I'm working with a collective. I'm also working with people in our constituency. I'm also working in a family environment. I'm working in a civil society environment. I'm working with particular governments. I'm working with the United Nations, right? So as activists, we're doing all that every day. But it's almost like because it's in front of us, we don't even see it. And so we don't see the violences and the discriminations and as well as the love that is in us. We don't kind of self-critique, we don't auto-critique. And if we don't do that, then we act out all kinds of craziness every day because we're not looking at ourselves. So there's many things that, and the reason why I'm saying this, if we really want to be honest about intergenerational work, then we have to be honest about these things, which is when I'm considering how and if I work with somebody, I have to think about things like, what's their politics? You know, are they left wing or right wing, or they sit in the middle? Do they even know that they have those politics? What about, I want to know, like, what's their socio-economic status? Because those who come from a lot of privilege and power, sometimes we don't even question ourselves. So we just kind of go, oh, well, the world is like this. And there's a whole set of other universes that are out there that we don't even consider. So it's not about everybody being the same, but it's about everybody at least being able to speak assertively and honestly about where is our position in community, because that also changes over time. The 16-year-old Nolene is not the 53-year-old Nolene, and hopefully won't be the 60-year-old Nolene. And then what about if we have a disability, or we're indigenous, or we're a Black person, indigenous, or a person of color? What about if we're white? What about if, you know, Australia and New Zealand is not the same, their politics right now. So their governments are different. One is more right-wing than the other. I don't even have to tell you which one it is, right? I think you know. And it's reflected in their climate change policies. So if I'm working with the governments, I want to know about those kinds of things. I also want to know about what kind of civil society organization you are working with. If you say you represent a group, what kind of group is it? Because if you say you work on young people, but all I can see represented is all old people, then I kind of have a little bit of discomfort, right? Because I'm like, okay, but everybody's, and what if you're young in that organization, but the only one who's allowed to speak in conferences is the lead like me? And nobody else gets to speak. And believe me, I've seen a lot of these, that it's just one voice that represents an entire set of networks. So if you do that, there's a number of things that happen. One, you can't build your youth organizing, because how are people going to practice to speak in public? How are people going to practice their analysis? How are we all going to learn? I learned because other women gave me the opportunity to be able to speak and to deal with hard questions. And I always tell the story that when I first went into Dawn, one of the networks around the world that works on economics, I literally didn't speak for like a whole year in public. And that was their choice. That was the way they moved. That doesn't mean that everybody has that movement, but it meant that I was very cautious about how I spoke, because they're talking about economic analysis. So until I open my mouth and break, you know, kind of 10 years of work on an issue, I want to be clear that I know what I'm saying. Or that when I speak, I say, I think this is what it's about, but I'm still learning on this issue. So all of us have the capacity to be able to speak whenever and however we wish, but we have to be humble enough to be able to speak about what we know and don't know. One of the internal conversations that we have in DIVA quite a bit is like, please don't use language if you don't know what it means. Because if you don't know what it means, certainly nobody else out there is going to know. There's certain kinds of conversations about certain areas of economics that I don't go near. I try, but I keep away from it because I'm not clear yet on the language. I'm still learning. But there are other sets of work that I really feel comfortable, so I can speak it. Because one of the other lessons learned over many, many years is if we aren't clear, if we can't break a topic down into a really understandable way, then I think maybe we don't know the topic well enough. Because somebody who's listening to you, it's a communication. So we're having to do that proper communication. So one of the things that I wanted to say was, it's not just about biological age. It's not even primarily about your biological age. It's about whether you know, to me, what happens is people use this as a shorthand. And they use it, like older people often use it as a shorthand to build up their fake expertise on something. You know, I'm older and therefore I'm wiser and therefore I know more. But I'll tell you what, young people also do it sometimes biologically. They use their age to say, I'm innovative, I'm creative, and you're not. So some of that kind of, I think, false narratives that we use about each other because of our biological ages, it's lazy analysis. Because there are young people who I know right now, there are people who I work with who are 12 and who are incredible activists. In South America, there's a young person, Francisco, who I work with very closely on ecological justice issues. He's 12 years old. He has incredible knowledge and expertise on areas of biological diversity. There are women who've been working on certain issues. A friend of ours who's an economist, Nicole Bidergain, she's been doing this work in the UN since she was 14 years old. So now when she's 30, she's had a longer set of analysis, a longer set of action than maybe most people who are in the movement. And certain people would still consider her young. I also have met a lot of older people who are in their 60s and 70s who are incredibly naive, who have positions who they haven't even looked at, that they haven't identified, they haven't auto-critiqued for 30 years. And it's not helpful, it's boring, and nobody wants to listen to it anymore. So I think that we should get away from this laziness around only biological age. What it's about is about technical accuracy, right? It's about political passion. It's about whether or not you're able to connect with your own ideas and other people's ideas. Don't give excuses anymore. I'm young, I can't do this. I'm old, I can't do this. There are many, many intersectional requirements that we have. And I really love feminism for that, because it doesn't allow us to be lazy. It says, once you take an intersectional analysis, once you look at how many identities you actually hold for yourself, whether you're a young woman, don't let a man close you down. If you're a transgender person, don't let a heterosexual person close you down. They're doing that because it's lazy and because it gives someone power. The reason why we are allowing people to do that, that's the real set of work, I think, in intergenerational work. So it takes time to build your body of analysis. Viva often asks me, but what is the annoying thing about working with young people? There's no annoying thing working with young people. What's annoying is when people don't put in our own set of work, when we don't auto-critique, when we don't do our work to be the best we can be. And sometimes we're going to fall over. Like many of us are feeling the strain right now with COVID. That's not because we're smart or we're dumb. That's not because of IQ or EQ or any of these matrices that we like to put, which let's be real about IQs and EQs, right? Intelligent quotients. They absolutely mean nothing because they're set up by white people. And the people who do best at those intelligent quotient tests, when we put those numbers together, that's made for a certain kind of body. It's made for a certain kind of intersectionality. So enough of that nonsense. And when we go into spaces like COP26, we have to go with power because we are the experts. Like, we know this. And that's why we have to have confidence. And stop acting like it's, fake expertise. Fake expertise only because of the numbers and the names after that you got from your university. One of the things that my father taught me very, very early, which I love him for so much, is giving me a sense of critique and saying, you're going to have many people from many different kinds of universities. Some of them are the academic ones and some are from other ones. You get your knowledge from all kinds of places. And be careful of those who only listen to people with a piece of paper. I think all of us have it doesn't mean that we don't need experts in things. Of course we do. But I tell you what, there are people from social movements who have much more knowledge on an issue, like carbon trading, like every single issue, gender, everything you can think of, because they've been working on it for a period of time and they have put their love and their energy and their brain power to work. It's not about whether they went to uni or not. And no one knows those rural places better than you rural people. Nobody knows women's bodies better than women. Nobody knows LGBTQI issues than LGBTQI people. And the sooner that we do that, the sooner we can stop wasting our time on whether people are young people or not, and we can get to grips with whether the solutions that we're putting forward are the things that really are going to help us. So I'm going to end with, who's my ally or accomplice? It's not about, I'm not worried about working with, whatever age. I want to work with people who believe that people are equal, who spend their time, building a system that's going to take us out of where we are right now, out of this ecocide. And that's why this conference to me matters. That's why this session matters. That's why youth-led activism matters, but also that accomplices matter. I love what Shamima Ali said. You're going to put me in my coffin, I'll still be doing my activism. So it doesn't matter what age we are, Women's business, people's activist business is everywhere. And thank you for the opportunity, Viva, to speak in this. Thanks.
Thank you, Nolene. Thank you for a very inspirational and very motivating spiel. I always get inspired when Nolene do her spiels. Just to pick up from what Nolene was talking about, which is actually, should be the root of how we move this intergenerational work. If we really about intersectionality, then we have to be very sure that we are okay to auto-critique ourselves, where we are really doing well and where we need to really put on maybe a feminist praxis, where we act, reflect, and then we act again. And also, how can we be more of a recognizing our privilege? Privilege only if you recognize your privilege, and if you know that you have privilege and you can use it for a good purpose, for a good cause, then you will be okay. And you will be also okay if you get called out with it, you'll speak about it. But for those that you kind of underground and hide your privilege and think like you can just, that there's a certain way that we need to speak as young people, and there's a certain way that we need to speak as women, and then we don't know how to really make sure that everybody is getting a chance to share their views and opinions, then we need to really critique ourselves. And I really, really, really like about this thing about intersection requirement, because we need to think about that. There is in all the work that we do, regardless whether it's climate change, human rights, or about looking after family or community, or the network that we're working with, we need to be thinking about the intersection requirement that all our works require. So thank you for that, Nolene. Now is the time we'll open up the floor for any burning questions from the participants to the panelists. And may I just stress that the panelists are not here as experts. They're also here to also learn from you all as participants. So either you have questions for them, or you want to share to get the conversation going from what one of the panelists has spoke about, you can also easily do that. Any questions or any comments of the session from the panel, for the panelists, from the participants? Luis, tech team, are you?
Yep.
So for the participants, do they just unmute and then they ask their questions? So how we go about the question and answer if they have questions, or they just post it in the chat, the Q&A column?
Yeah, they won't have access to come off mute, but they can just engage with the chat.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and
so we don't have any questions.
Sorry.
You have a... Okay, so far I'm checking the question and answers column. There's no question and answers, but I'd like to open it up to the panelists. If there's things that you've heard, or you want to free to
Oh, I think Viva's dropped out. I was just wondering, one of the things that I was wondering, Tima, maybe could I start with you? I just take a little moment while we're waiting for Viva to come back. You know, what's the things, you work a lot with women in sports and, you know, and many other issues. Why should everybody, you know, we keep talking as DIVA saying everybody should be a climate change activist. What do you think about that idea, you know, and how is that as a strategy, you know, to get everybody, you know, we often get people who say, why is a group of lesbians interested in climate change? What's your business in that area? Yeah.
From what I think, from my end, coming from a sports background, sports people also should advocate for climate change because it affects them in many ways. Would say when there is disaster, there won't be any training, there won't be any game, there won't be any sports activity. So I think for all sports people, and also in the system for in the sports system to also talk about the justice and the issue of climate change. Yeah, that's from my end. Those things.
Bella, anything? What about you in terms of, you know, Viva, are you back yet? What about issues that you want to raise in terms of climate change? Is there anything you want to add in? You know, you've been listening to the session. Anything you particularly want to add? Because we're coming up to COP26. Everybody says this is an incredibly important conference of the parties. Okay, so what does that mean for grassroots engagement and young women around the world? Thanks, Viva. I'll hand back now. Yeah.
Thank you, Nels.
Bella, from my side, Nolin, I think for our leaders out there is if they could empower our grassroots women youth advocate with climate skills and provide strategies. You know, for me as a young youth, I always say, let no one tell you that you can't do anything. That's what I always go with. Let no one tell you that you can do it in whatever capacity and with whichever kind of knowledge you have. Your contribution to climate justice is equally important as everyone else. So to all the young youths out there is that we all deserve a healthy environment to live, regardless of race, nationality, ages, or gender. This is the basic right of human rights. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Bella. We have
thank you.
Nakabella. We have a questions from the chat. Could anyone talk on the third cone operations and long game work on the urgency of the climate justice? And the other one is, what do you all feel is the biggest form of queer strength or offering in the climate crisis discourse?
I mean, I don't know how others feel, but I'd say the two things from Chanela. The first thing, you know, like the urgency and the long game, they're kind of the same because we're not going to have a long game unless we ramp up, you know, and get away from fossil fuel right now. So that's the short answer for that is like, I don't think there is a difference. I actually think we have to be the strongest and fiercest that we can be right now on policy. And we know what we need to do. And if we don't do that, then we're not going to get a long game to talk about. We have just devastated the ecosystems and the you know, and the planetary systems. So that's it. And then the last one about femme and queer strength. You know, the first one, Chanela, is to say when we started 10 years ago, and these gang can talk more about it, we didn't even know what we were going to we were going to work on. All we knew was there was violence against young people, and I think Viva and Tima can talk about that, you know, like where DIVA came from. And out of that, we've got a 4-year set of research that you can find online. Maybe Kado or someone can share that in the chat, and then I won't say any more. But really, I just wanted to say, like, this whole glorious experiment is that it's an experiment that we've been doing for 10 years. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about what that really means to do that experiment, because it's not easy. You know, people think that lesbians don't have anything to do with climate change. My God, there were 25 women who weren't able to, you know, to go into an emergency center. And we're now wanting to build our own emergency centers because we want to have alternates for people who want to shelter from the storms and don't have to worry about if someone's going to look at them in the wrong way or have violence against them. And there are women who think the same thing. You know, they're being raped in emergency centers. And we want to talk about all of that, about the dark stuff, about climate and about thank you, Viva. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And then maybe just to continue what Noli mentioned is that LGBTI women, we always have to think about to be in a homosexual relationship, you always get left out, even when there's government distribution come around. The homes that have a homosexual relationship in it, we're normally the one get left out from the community listing, regardless if we have children, regardless if we are carer for elderly in our family. Our house get to be the last house if there's a chance of getting assistance, or if there's none, then we get to be the one who get left out in the whole system. And for the question just being pop up about, you know, opportunity to speak within their communities, when families or cultures still very patriarchal. Yeah, and I think what Lavinia was talking about is we need to have a different kind of approach into that kind of setting. So example, for women that we've been working with from Kandavu, they have to go into these spaces with a part of our Women Defend the Commons network, and then we've been accompanying them in 2 conferences already. And what they did when they went back, they went straight in and talk about why is it important to have discussion about involving women into the conversation, where they're making decisions within villages, within their families, about what they need to do. So how they do that is little material things, like we provide them with seedlings that they can go back to their village and they plant in their backyard. And that's what they provide for the whole village, not just for their family, but they actually provide for the whole villages and their neighboring village. And they make sure, and we make sure that when they go through disaster, these are the women, when we use women to be the focal point to get the assistance across to their village, they get recognized for that. If they don't come into the space with anything, so that's why it's important when you have women, when you have young women who is already coming from a marginalized group or from a community that is so patriarchal, the setting, we need to make sure that when we're including them into this kind of space, we're also taking into consideration not just the structural advocacy that we want to do, but also what are the little changes that they can actually go back with and go and help move the work that they are doing. So those kind of approaches kind of help us make sure that the women go back with some things that they can take to the table and negotiate with men, such as making them focal point. As our focal point is in, they are our person that we work with on the ground. We don't, normally people will just go for the Turangani Koro, the chief, the headman of the village. But for us, we're very clear, we will work with the woman, the head of the women's group. Therefore, they cannot ignore the woman. They will have to make sure that women are represented in their spaces. So I hope that kind of answer the questions about how do we are not going to be ever given, let's be real, we're never going to be given in a silver plate a platform like, now it's your turn to speak. We'll have to make it ourselves, is what we always say as feminists and grassroots organizers. I will now ask the other panelists if there's anything that you want to share is your last comment. I've been given the sign that we have only 10, I think like 5 minutes now. That
Viva, can I be your chat buddy?
5 to 7
can I
minutes?
just
Yes.
Can I just be your chat buddy and just tell you got an awesome question? Have you ever felt like the trophy brown activist in conferences and dialogues, and how have you addressed it? Sometimes when I'm in shared spaces, that's how I feel. Or is this just a me problem? So like being the tokenistic brown girl. We always talk about it in DIVA a lot. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. So we have 7 minutes to go. Like, any last comments from the team before we close up the session? Lavinia, any last comment from you, or Tima, Bella? Bonita is trying to get on, but she has sent also her talking point, so I will share it with the organizers after. La, any last comment?
I would love to say something.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Okay. You can go ahead, La.
Okay, go, La. La, yeah.
Vinaka, I just want to thank the DIVA and also the Young Women's Grassroots for coming up with this event, so that we can share our knowledge, and also so that the leaders can hear our voices and do something, so that we can hear each other in the villages, so that we can work together and share ideas and all. So thank you, Viva. Thank you, Nolin, and everybody for this opportunity. Vinaka.
Thank you, La. Bella, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Nolin and I've learned a lot from Nolin. I went with Nolin to Kandavu, so I've learned a lot from Nolin. And so thank you, Nolin, and thank you, Viva, and the Diva as all. And one thing, I was going around thinking about Ganga in my head, and I was like, man, Ganga is championing too. So we are here as a championing voice for everyone, as youth, the women, and every diversity. So I just like to end it up with, please make sure we have an agenda for women specific, for gender specifically. Naka.
Thank you, Bella.
Just a quick one from my end, just to add on, is to always have the inclusiveness of young people into spaces, and also is to always have gender into all climate justice policies, declaration, inclusive. That's all from my end. Thank you.
Thank you, Tima. Nolin, any last comment before we wrap up?
No, really, passing the mic, just saying, please, let's be intergenerational on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Nolin. Well, we've come to the end. Just before we end the session, let me just share this little bit story about our organizing this morning before we came into this meeting. So I must say, Lavinia, she's currently staying in Lami village right now with her parents due to COVID, the lockdown. So just like around 10 a.m., she was finding it hard to log in. So we have to make sure that she gets a cab from Lami to Lodala Beach, so we can set her up at my front room so she can be able to be in the session. Bonita was trying this morning to log in from 9 a.m. when we were starting, and then she couldn't. Then we have to make sure we go on a messenger call to guide her through the process to log in into the session. The reason I want to say that is, let's be real with how we're organizing, because not all organizing is the same. And I'm sure for us as grassroots feminists and human rights defenders that are really trying to make our work inclusive and making sure that we are bringing in all voices that needs to be in this kind of platform, in this kind of spaces. And when we're coming up to COP26, If we're having to do this kind of extra mile of work just to make sure that all individual voices and opinions count, then it should be something we all take into consideration. That we need to, if it's about pushing ourselves, to push ourselves from our comfort zone, to be real with how we are saying about inclusivity, about intersectionality, and making sure that it's about leaving no one behind, then let's be real on that. On behalf of the DIVA Management Collective and ED, on behalf of Tanganga, Grassroots, Young Women's Network, Pacific Rainbow Advocacy Network, and Alliance for Future Generation, we thank you for being with us through this session. And we thank you, the organizer, for giving us an opportunity to come and co-host this session with you all. And we hope that you've all enjoyed the session as much as we have. And we look forward to more collaboration and more work like this with you all in the future. Without further ado, say thank you and Vinaka Valevo for joining us. Thanks.